Hello, everybody, and welcome to another amazing episode of Unstoppable Success, the podcast where we hear from amazing leaders and influential professionals who are doing the work to have unstoppable success. I'm your host, Jaclyn Strominger, and I cannot wait to introduce you to our next guest. So today we are joined by Brian Samson. He is a global operator and an investor who spent over a decade building high performing teams across Latin America and the US, from raising 2 million as a founder and scaling to 80 team members to leading talent at multiple VC-backed companies. Brian has been at the forefront of growth where it matters most, people, and he deals with a lot with people today in lots of different capacities, and we'll get into that too. But he's leading his leadership roles at Lending Club pre-IPO have been part of the executive team at Sosh, later acquired by Postmates and then ultimately Uber. And today is a general partner at Hang Ten Capital in his mission, connecting world-class talent across the Americas with hyper-growth U.S. companies. Brian, welcome to the show.
I am honored to be here. Thank you so much.
I'm so excited to have you because let's talk actually about talent and nearshoring, because to have unstoppable success, one of the things that I believe we all need to be able to do is delegate.
Yeah, absolutely.
And delegation to the right people at the right cost
Yeah,
is hard for somebody who might not be generating the right income yet.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great place to start. Uh, I remember the very first time that I offshored something. So I
Okay.
was doing, yeah, I was like a head of recruiting for a San Francisco tech startup, and sourcing and list building, is it's tedious. It takes a long time,
Mhm.
especially for technical talent, because you've got to really read through these resumes and make sure that they've got this particular skill set. So I went to Upwork, which is a great place to start. It was a great place to start 15 years ago, and it's still a great place to start, just like platforms like Fiverr. And found somebody in the Philippines, and I went through all the steps you should probably do of I figured out my budget, which wasn't a lot. So I think it was like I was looking for $8 an hour, maybe, which at the time I think was maybe even above market for somebody to do that. And uh, took them through a couple exercises so I could see my short list of candidates, how they did it, how they took instruction. And the first one was just like striking gold, they they were basically building these great lists for me that were ready. They found all the email addresses, which was so hard to do. It's 2026 today, so there's AI for that, but in 2011, 2012, it really wasn't. So offshoring was like AI before AI, got there.
Right, right, right,
Um,
right.
Now I will say like the second person I hired was kind of a disaster. The third one was pretty good. The fourth one was better. So, you kind of take your lumps. But it was just like ultimate leverage. And I just remember how much time was freed up for me, where I could do all these events. I could have more conversations with hiring managers and leaders in the business. I could spend more time on strategy and immigration and compensation instead of kind of being sucked into this world of research, right?
Yep.
So, highly recommend it. And again, there's some really low cost platforms out there that can give you
Right,
that leverage.
right. So talk to me. I mean, so do you now still use Fiverr or Upwork, but or you created your own platform now to help people find
Yeah. So I think for companies that are like into that second gear, that's where I've existed. For the last 11 years, I've been doing nearshoring. So, for those that don't know all the definitions of that because nearshoring is not as commonly known as offshoring,
Right.
but offshoring almost everybody's heard of. And there's really three big countries that illustrate it. There's China, India, and the Philippines, and they each have their focus. China is really the manufacturing offshore center for the world.
Right.
Um, Look at your office, at your home. A lot of things are made in a factory in China.
Right. Right. The chair you're
Uh,
sitting on. Right.
Probably, yeah. You look at India has been the IT offshoring center for forever. I mean, they graduate more software engineers every year than some countries have people. I mean, it's just insane. And then the Philippines have really established themselves as the back office, call center, virtual assistants, researchers, medical billers, things like that. And Asia has always come out on top when it comes to price. But there's a problem with Asia. If you're coming from a US perspective, you've got this giant ocean in between the US and Asia, and that means time zone is rough. If you've ever offshored something, you're probably making a sacrifice one way or the other. And there's a couple different sacrifices that people are making. They're either up at ungodly hours to try to match their team, or their team is up at ungodly hours to match them, or they've given instructions, flipped it over the wall, and they're kind of crossing their fingers that the team on the other side of the world understood it. They've got all the directions. It's all clear. We know that doesn't always happen. So you might come back and, oh, that's not quite what I wanted. You send new instructions the next day. You're kind of hoping. So a lot of it gets missed. And then, someone I talked to the other day shared this experience that I don't talk about a lot, but I think other people might have. Is so he works with the team in Asia, but he happens to be a morning energy person. So when he wakes up, and I could relate to this because I think I'm the same way. When I wake up, this is when I do my best deep thinking work. Like my brain is sharp and strong, and I've got a good night rest right behind me. Um, and this is how he normally worked. But now he has this team in China and the Philippines, and he has to like totally restructure his day so his morning maps with them. So it's just kind of back and forth email, you get right into it. But then by the time the afternoon rolls around, he's mentally tired. He doesn't have to do these conversations anymore, but he's mentally exhausted. And now he's supposed to do his deep strategy work and deep thinking. So there's a trade-off, and I don't think everybody understands this trade-off you're making when you're offshoring. And nearshoring for the US is Latin America. And this is where this time zone kind of mitigates everything we just talked about. You can get real-time answers, jump on a Zoom call right away because everyone's on your same time zone. WhatsApp, text, Slack, everyone is right there, and it's this full collaboration. You send over instructions. 5 minutes later, they're like, Jaclyn, I don't quite understand this. You just talk it through, and then you're working the same workday overlap. Now, is Latin America a little bit more expensive than Asia? It is, but a little bit, not a lot. So that's where there's this arbitrage of great quality, full workday collaboration with just a little bit of cost increase over Asia. And that's what we built. So 11 years of working within Latin America. I even lived in Argentina, and I've learned a lot about how to align it and make sure the right labor is connected to the right companies and the right entrepreneurs.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about this because I find this truly fascinating. As somebody who does have a VA, I love my VA. He does a lot of my social media posts, but there are things that I would love to, like I'm thinking about that I literally have been thinking about now. Like I want to have somebody do other tasks, right? Um, so what? is Latin America known for
Yeah.
specific things? I'm like,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
So
pointing my fingers like I'm going around the world.
I'm right there with you. I could see the globe, the imaginary globe. I'm right there
Yeah,
with you. For those that are listening, just listening to the audio only,
I know. I'm
they,
pointing my finger around the world.
they might be a little lost, but totally with you, Jaclyn. I know exactly where you're going. Now, Latin America is several countries, right? So there's Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Peru, and so on and so forth. And they each kind of have their specialties.
Okay.
Mexico, I think there's a couple things that are really interesting about it. Um, Regardless of where you are on the political fence, politics matters when it comes to where work is done. And right now, China and even India, they're kind of in the doghouse with this administration.
Hmm.
But work still needs to get done. So a lot of that has moved to Latin America, and Mexico is really benefiting, especially on the manufacturing side. So there's a
Okay.
lot of auto plants.
Right.
Recently, I took a flight from San Francisco, California to Monterrey, Mexico, and almost the entire flight was Korean auto executives because they're doing a lot of,
Wow.
Tesla, Hyundai.
Totally not would have, but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, they're all in Monterey. So you land there and it's just
Monterey, Mexico, not Monterey, California. Just making sure we understand that. They're not all at Pebble Beach.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. I haven't seen that many auto plants at Pebble Beach, but beautiful place otherwise. So yeah, you just have this sea of auto plants, Toyota, wherever. Um, and then Mexico also, there's over 100 million people there. They've got a really famous technical university, the Technical University of Monterrey. Mexico City is a mega city. Guadalajara is their version of Silicon Valley. So there's a lot of great technical talent as well as manufacturing. Argentina has been the victim of really bad government for decades and decades and decades. What people might not know is right before World War II, Argentina was one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And if you've ever been to Buenos Aires, it looks like Paris. It's this,
Mhm.
beautiful architecture, tree-lined streets, but a ton of government mismanagement. So
I
that
feel like
that's
there's a movie involved. Just anyway.
so what that has actually meant for people is for them to um, come out ahead economically, they've had to learn US style English and learn how to work with US style companies.
Okay.
So there's this massive, where if your country does really well domestically, you don't have to look outside. But
Right.
if your country is a rough place to live, um, due to no fault of your own, you find ways to work with people in other countries. So Argentina's been exporting software engineers forever. Brazil has become world famous for data engineers and AI engineers. A lot of Silicon Valley companies are not just looking to Brazil for cost savings, they're just looking for it to get the best AI engineers in the world. And that's surprising to a lot of people, but it's exciting. And then the last country I want to hit on is Nicaragua, but really Central America in general. This has become a big competition between Central America and the Philippines. Central America's got a lot of young, energetic, well-educated, perfect English speakers without accents that understand US style English, so it doesn't feel scripted or kind of boxed. And they're doing all sorts of virtual assistant, BPO, back office, customer service, and that has gone famously well for a lot of companies.
Wow.
So Latin America is a series of a lot of different pockets of talent, and you just got to know kind of which card to play for what roles you're looking for.
Right. I absolutely love that. You know, It is so helpful, and I think this is actually something really key. So, listeners, one of the biggest things about what Brian is doing in helping people find talent, and for us to have success, you know, sometimes we have to have an expenditure so that we are not out there doing the things that are not our superpowers. And so, finding those people to fill in those spaces for us is really essential so that we can do what is our superpower and what we're meant to be on this planet. We're not meant to, some of us are not meant to do the back office stuff while we do the front office stuff, so to speak. So really important, I think, for to have that growth. So I'm curious, as you were looking at, talent, how what are some of those key questions that maybe that somebody maybe who's looking to bring somebody on that they should really ask? Like, how do they bring on like that perfect VA?
Yeah, sure. So we have these conversations a lot, as we do about 100 placements every year with US companies. And we get a lot of questions on, well, my budget is this, or maybe it's actually us asking them to kind of help them get their thoughts together. But I would think about what your budget is because not every country is equal in pricing in Latin America. I would think about, do you want one or many, right? Because you might be able to find one person in Paraguay, but could you build out a whole team? I don't know, right? Depending on the skill set. Um, do you need really advanced English, or maybe one person that's really fluent, and then the rest of the team doesn't quite matter because you have this go-between, and that could lower your overall weighted cost. Do you want to travel there, right? Like Mexico or Central America is right there. Buenos Aires is still a 9-10 hour flight from Dallas. So there's all sorts of considerations. And then the last one that I've learned the hard way
Mhm.
is equipment. Do they need certain hardware? Now, for a lot of people, maybe it's social media or basic Excel spreadsheets or something like that. A regular laptop will do. But if you are a tech company, you might need to ship a big, powerful MacBook or something. And you realize, wow, it's 3 times the cost to get it in Brazil or Argentina or Peru because of tariffs and customs and things like that.
Right.
So these are all things that, we might have people think about, before they do it, and we'll steer them to the right country, the right city, um, and uh, and then maybe to answer your original question about types of questions that they should be asking the talent, you know, um, after years and years of doing this, I think my answers have shifted to do it almost exactly like you were to hire somebody in a different city in the States. So
Right.
if you have a company in Cincinnati, but you're talking to a candidate in Dallas, interview them the exact same way you might hire somebody in Lima, Peru.
Right. Right. Yeah. You just have to bring people on and you have to see if it's the right fit and the right values. And then, time, like, figuring out when people are going to work and all those things. It's really key and important. I love that what you're doing, with talent, because talent is so important to any company. Now, I want to sort of switch gears for a little bit because there is something else that you do, which I think that people need to know about. It has to do with talent, but talent in a little different way, and that is raising talent from a young age, so to speak, and that is fostering. And I wanted, and to me, that is something that, I'm a mom to biological kids, but I always think about my kids as being participating members of society.
Yeah.
That's what that is the purpose of having children. So not to just do your work. No, just kidding. Not to do the laundry, but being participating members of society, right? I mean, maybe back in the day you had kids to be farmhands. I don't know, but 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 I wanted to bring this because it still comes back to, in some ways, in my the way of looking at it, is really fostering great people and bringing people in. So I wanted to for you to share about how you got into fostering
Yeah.
and um, and share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I so appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. As you were sharing earlier, it made me think because I'm a child of the 80s. I've got two younger brothers, and I think as soon as we were able to hold the lawnmower or the snow shovel or the rake, my dad had us out, doing all the yard work.
Right.
So, and then, he could sit on his chair for once.
Right.
But foster care, I didn't know anything about this world. I didn't know any foster kids growing up, or at least that I was aware of. I didn't know any other foster parents. And then in 2020, my wife and I were at church, and they had somebody from the local community. There was like a foster program that they were running, like a nonprofit, trying to help connect good families with foster kids. And Hawaii, there's 1.4 million people in the state. There's about 2,000 foster kids, and she was just kind of talking about the lives that these kids had, and it was just really rough. And the stats and the data. I mean, I think there's like 3% of kids that are in the foster system will go on to graduate from college. 3%, more than half will be uh, uh, will get involved in sex trafficking, drugs, prison, and it got me really sad because I grew up in a nice, Midwestern middle class house. I never had to worry about any of that stuff. We've got a biological son, and then we fostered a little girl and later adopted her. Um, but like, you know, these kids, they don't choose their environment. They didn't choose it, right?
Right.
And I think if you're well off, you just kind of take it for granted that every other kid is like this. But there's this whole world. There's 440,000 foster kids in the U.S., and they didn't pick their environment. They didn't pick their parents. They didn't pick the neglect and abuse and everything that they're going through. So as we heard about this speech, my wife and I kind of looked at each other like, if we don't do it, who else is going to do it? Let's do it. We have the resources, the time. I'm not going to say it was easy. It was rough. But 2 years later, this little girl was, we were able to officially adopt her. She brightens up our room, our house. We took her in when she was 6 months old. She's really close. In July, she'll have her 6-year old birthday. Um,
Oh,
and it's just the greatest joy, the greatest thing. Again, it's not easy, but anything worth anything is
it's
hard.
never right.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd encourage you if you have it in your heart. And then even, another way to support this world is respite care. Uh, there's a lot of burden on foster parents, and sometimes they just need a break to kind of reset, regroup,
Yeah.
and you can basically take those kids in for a Saturday or a weekend, give those foster parents a chance to recharge, and you can make a huge difference.
Right. Yeah. No, that's huge. And respite care it's really big. And there's different types of respite care too. Like there's respite care for I must admit, like for foster kids. I know here in Reno there's respite care for families who are taking care of children with they have children of disabilities in need, and so the parents need a break, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of thing. Um, that's so important. So I'm curious. So when you started to foster, a lot of times I think people think of fostering or even adopting that the kids are troubled or coming from you uh, weaning off their drugs, so to speak,
Yeah,
because their
yeah.
parents were unfortunately drug addicts. So How do you, I guess talk a little bit about that because I think maybe there's some
Hmm.
misconceptions of
Yeah.
in this out there,
mean,
so to speak.
I'll be a little raw here, because it everything you talked about was in our case. Our little girl, when her birth mom was pregnant, slept on a park bench, had zero prenatal care when she was, in and out of prison. When our little girl was in her first few months of life, she was in a boarded up meth house, just like the
Wow.
worst. But again, she didn't pick it, right?
Right,
She didn't choose that.
right,
She didn't choose to grow up like that. It just happened. So yeah, I mean, like the raw reality of it is, most of the kids are going to come from rough environments, rough situations, but you're also, making the biggest impact you'll ever make, by saving them, rescuing them, putting them in a place that's safe and secure and
right,
stable. You'll make a huge difference.
right. And so, what percentage of the kids who get into a foster family get adopted by that family?
I don't know that stat off the top of my head, but
Yeah,
there's two different types of foster parents. There's usually, relatives, so maybe like an aunt or an uncle or grandparents kind of step in to
right,
foster, and that's generally the most common. And then unrelated foster parents are less common. Um, the unrelated ones, there's almost kind of two buckets there. Um, there's somewhat of like the professional foster parents that do this, and they get paid, and there's the ones that, are kind of doing it because they want to try to help. And then further, that's kind of spun off from the ones that are, looking for foster to adopt, uh, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, that foster situation gives that birth parent a chance to get their lives together, and it's really, really difficult to, return to society, get off drugs, get back into a civilized, productive member of society.
right,
You have a 3-year-old you're still trying to care for too.
right.
So, it doesn't always work that way, but, sometimes that, can be the life raft that birth parent needs to get their act together.
Yeah. So, I, I'm thinking about the fostering, and I'm thinking about, what you're talking about, what you're saying, and how obviously it creates an impact. And I see there's a kind of a little bit of a correlation too, between obviously helping somebody who is a local person in your community who is truly in need. And then with what you're doing in these nearshore
Mhm.
countries, it's also helping these people who don't have the ability necessarily to um, you're adding to people's livelihoods in these countries as well. I mean, you're like both sides of things that you're talking about right now are it's raising people up and helping them raise up in where they are.
Yeah, thanks for framing it that way. I appreciate that. I think there's a lot of people in the world that just want a chance.
Right.
They're humble, they're hungry, they're scrappy. They have all the attributes, they want to solve problems, they want to do good work. Um, they're not entitled, they just want a chance. And, that's where I'd really encourage people to look at Latin America, look at Asia, look at Europe, look at Africa. There's, a whole global talent market out there, and some people just want a chance.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Brian, I could talk to you about this for a long time. I think what you are doing is truly impactful. I mean, you truly are changing the world one person at a time, either way you look at it. And it's really truly commendable and like it warms my heart. It's like, oh, um, it's so great. So tell everybody how they can learn more about what you're doing, both nearshoring and learning more about fostering, because I think it's such an important thing to
Oh,
share.
thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. We do conversations all the time about nearshoring,
Mm.
help people think through the trade-offs of different countries and cities and talent pockets and budget and so forth. So there's no pressure. And even the model we use at Plugg Technologies, Plugg, Plugg Technologies, is to simply advise, help you with the job description, source candidates, you interview, and there's no invoice until that person starts working and they bill hours. And we take care of all the payroll and everything in Latin America. So it's really, really low risk. And that website is plugg.tech. And there's a contact us form. We'll make sure we jump right on that. In terms of fostering, there's one organization that really speaks to me. So generally every county, there's social workers that, are in charge of that. But there's a national organization called Together We Rise. And what really spoke to me is oftentimes foster kids are moving from house to house, family to family, and they just have a trash bag, to kind of collect
Oh,
what
there's stuff.
whatever small possessions that they have. And they put together these sweet cases, they call them, and they're like little duffel bags and usually teddy bears and fresh clothes and things like that. And just like a place for them to put all their other possessions too, give them some dignity, some self-confidence and self-esteem.
I absolutely love that. Okay, so listeners, we will put all of those links in the show notes. And do me the favor, please reach out to Brian. I think, the things that he is doing are really remarkable and really helping to rise and help everybody else rise above. And that's really, really important. So please reach out to Brian and then do me the favor and share this episode because this is an important message for everybody to hear. And lastly, we have a school community called Unstoppable Success. We'd love for you to join that. That's also where you can be with other like minded people to help you rise to have unstoppable success. Thank you, Brian, for being an amazing guest. Listeners, thank you for listening. I'm Jaclyn Strominger, your host. This is Unstoppable Success, helping you leap to your greatest success. I'm Jaclyn Strominger, and I want to invite you to join the Unstoppable Success community on School. You can go to Unstoppable Success at school-9143 and join us. In this community, you will get daily tips so that you can be unstoppable and you'll also connect with other leaders and professionals who are also aiming for their unstoppable success and are there to help you succeed. So join us in the community. We can't wait to see you on School.